Hello and welcome to the rMetroidvania podcast. I have Caldroth and Master here with me. I am Professor Q. Caldroth, if you want to introduce yourself?
This is Caldroth. I'll be playing today Demon's Crest.
This is Master. I'll be watching Caldroth play Demon's Crest.
Perfect. Let's get going. Let's see. Just making sure the stream's working okay while you do that. Alright, this is the second time I'm doing a recording stream, so if everyone can let me know if there's any technical issues, I'll try and resolve them live. So, first thing I'd like to say is I really like how this game starts.
What exactly is happening?
Do you know what? Now that you mention it, I really don't know what Firebrand is doing here. Is this how the last game ends?
So, in the cutscene that you see if you wait a long time, it explains that he got defeated by Phalanx, while he was weakened after defeating everything else, and then basically got sealed away for centuries or something like that. And I guess that was just the prison he was in.
And they just keep undead dragons hanging out in those prisons.
Yeah.
I always love how these undead monsters are always really strong, even though their muscles and skin are hanging off their bodies.
Right, it implies that their strength doesn't come from their body. It comes from some sort of magical thing that they have.
Right.
So you're not fighting this bag of flesh and bones. You're fighting this bag of magic.
So I find it interesting also that you get a heart, right there at the beginning before you can do anything else. I'm trying to think of what that does from a game design standpoint.
It's so that the first boss is a little bit harder.
Maybe?
Why are you just destroying statues?
Because you gotta use this headbutt for something.
So Caldroth mentioned before the stream that he's done this quite a few times before, so I can already tell that he has a bit of a... Did you ever actually speedrun this?
No.
Okay.
I've just played it a bunch of times.
It looks fun. I should play it.
Basically anything Capcom made in that era, in the NES era, still holds up today. They did a pretty good job. Almost
I don't know
everything.
any other games that have brought back the headbutt.
The headbutt's new for this game too, isn't it? Hitting things in the background?
Yep.
This will be the third game in this series, so this is the Super Metroid of the Gargoyles Quest series. So, we have a lot of different topics that we talked about this week that we could go over today. Master, is there anyone that stuck out that you would like to talk about this week?
I don't really remember what topics we have lined up, to be honest.
So today we're talking about what makes a good story.
What does make a good story? That's an excellent question.
Well, it depends on what aspect of the story we're talking about. When we were talking before, we were kind of separating it into lore, plot, characterization is what I said. But some people make a separation specifically for story.
So I like to separate story and plot. And that's about as far as I take the separation. Like you mentioned characterization, I personally see that as an aspect of story that you could cover. If it's a character-driven story that's focused on the characters, then of course that would be how the characters develop would be the most important aspect of the story. I love his hand gesture. I think I'm gonna have to remember this rapid fire thing that you do.
Yeah, if you get right up in their grill, then the fireball goes away really fast, and you can shoot again.
Right, it's the Mega Man. Yeah, your sprite limit or your rapid fire is limited by the number of sprites on the screen, not by some other measure. This guy's kind of weak. You hit him once with a fireball and he gets like flying, goes like flying.
Looks like he's coughing.
Yeah,
So-
I'm very glad that you can skip through the dialogue in this game. There's a lot of Metroidvanias where the dialogue kind of gets in the way.
So I guess another question, as long as we're playing this game, would you say that this game has a good story?
No. It has an unobtrusive story, which I guess can kind of mean that it's good.
As long as it gets out of the way?
Yeah.
I think a story in a video game is best when it drives the player forward to discover how it ends.
Right. A lot of games try to do that though, and they end up just failing terribly because by the end you don't really have any desire to get to the end other than just because that's what you need to do to beat the game.
Now, is this when you say this, is it because the gameplay isn't good enough to support the desire to move forward, or why do you think? What do you think the main reason why you wouldn't have a desire to see the story end?
I think I wouldn't really care about a story that much if I just find it to be. I mean, it's hard to say what makes a bad story. I guess if it's, a combination of being tropey and just having weak presentation or not developing its characters. All of those things can make a bad story.
So you're saying it's the story's fault and not the gameplay's fault then, usually, if you don't care about the story.
Yeah.
At least
the game can have pretty bad gameplay, and if it's an interesting story, I'd still be interested in the story. I consider that separate from the gameplay.
So if a game has like really bad gameplay but the most amazing story, I'm trying to think of some examples of that.
What defines bad gameplay? Is a visual novel bad gameplay?
That's a good. I mean, I would say that a visual novel is the most basic means of getting. It's like turning pages in a book. That is literally what visual novel means. So, like, there are decisions, but it's like having a choose your own adventure. That's what the gameplay is making choices within the story. I forgot that. Okay, so do you have infinite lives in this game?
Yeah, infinite continues. I'm pretty sure I went to the wrong level first.
Oh, I was seeing that whirlwind on the bottom right there.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that this time.
That would have already enticed me. I would have already been in there. Oh, go straight to another boss. What? Him again?
Yeah, there's a few repeats.
When I say bad gameplay, though, I mean like, let's say random. Like, let's say it's an RPG, and the RPG is horribly imbalanced. You have to grind in order to accomplish anything. Because the odds are just not in your favor. Like, you could beat it at a lower level, but it's completely a coin toss whether or not you can. Welcome, Salmace. Yeah, and Caldroth's playing. He's actually played this a lot, so he's actually very good at it. But that's what I mean by
Right after I died.
You know, when you're live, it's really difficult to play your top game.
So there is a game I bought recently, actually, that everyone says just has terrible gameplay, but a great story. Though, story, that depends. Like, if you're separating lore and plot into different things. I actually haven't played it yet, so I couldn't say, but yeah, Sunless Sea is the game I'm talking about.
That one has bad gameplay? Isn't that the Souls-like one, or the one that some people call Souls-like?
I don't think so.
I might be thinking of a different one.
No, you have a boat, and there's people on the boat, and I don't know, you go around and you do boat things, and then you die to a sea monster, and then you start a new boat, your character. But people say it has a great world, which you might say is different from a story.
Well, I mean, sort of, maybe. It depends on what the story is. Salmes, I'm actually not having too much trouble looking at it from my phone, so the best I can recommend is possibly refreshing. Might be a little bit choppy. So, when I say story, it's kind of the point, like, I don't want to say like the moral, but like the message or what the story, what it's trying to accomplish. I think a good example of this is Just Right did a video on the difference between story and plot, and he used the Lord of the Rings as an example. And the plot to the Lord of the Rings ends, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, or read the book from, how old is this book now? Like 80 years at this point? The plot ends when the ring goes into Mordor. But the story ends when Frodo goes to the west, and his arc ends.
That's me.
That's an example of that. Because in the Lord of the Rings, the story is about Frodo, even though the plot that they have to go through has to do with the danger of the ring.
Great, I get it.
So in the case of world building, if the story is about the history of the world, I don't know if that's necessarily an interesting story, but if there is a story to be told there, a point to be made, then that could be the story. And in Dark Souls, like, there's a lot of lore in Dark Souls, but then you have little stories like what happens with Onion Bro, what is his name? Sigmire and Solaire are kind of like mini stories that you can partake in. Is that lore or is that story? And I would say that would be story in that case.
Okay. I thought you were saying that the story was centered, like the personal journey of the protagonist. But you're saying story is just anything a character does?
It's kind of... I personally see it as something you could learn from, something you can relate to. And usually it has a structure, a message to say. And in the case of like something like this game, it would be, I would say the story is more what the player experiences in the battles with the bosses. It's when you go talk with your friends about the game afterwards and say, oh my gosh, that boss was so difficult or whatever. And Calderas, how would you rate this boss right here in terms of how good a boss it is?
It's got a lot of weighting to it, and there's not much you can do about it. And there's some attacks that if they hit, like, if he attacks you at a certain like distance, you can't actually avoid. So this one's actually not a very great boss.
Not a good example.
Yeah.
So this is a bad story right here.
Like I'm just sitting here, like waiting for these slow fireballs.
But I think that's an opportunity that games have often, is the story that the player makes for themselves.
I see. Sorry if I don't have the most stuff to say about the definition of story.
It's really weird. I was just commenting that for Salmes, it's really weird that the phone stream works better than the than his computer stream. Anyway, what are you going to say, Master?
So, I guess I value lore higher than, like, good lore I value higher than a good story, because most of the time, like, any game can have a story, but not every game actually has lore at all. Even I don't think this game has much lore in it. I haven't seen any indications of it besides whatever these dialogue boxes are that Culture skips past.
Usually it's, oh my gosh, I'm going to beat you, and then, oh man, I can't believe you beat me.
That's pretty much it.
So, on the subject of a game story, the biggest opportunity a game has is making the player have their own story. Lore is actually something that can really enhance that, because it enhances the immersion of being in the game, because the game feels more real with the lore that it presents. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think lore is definitely a good thing that a video game can do.
Yeah.
I feel like lore is actually better for Metroidvanias because it doesn't. It's one of those things that's more out of the way, and like you don't. Like the world can be pretty empty, which I feel like works pretty well for a Metroidvania. Like the whole isolation thing, and you can still have lore in a world like that.
So you think in general maybe a story is not a feature that Metroidvanias should put as their top priority?
I mean, you can. I just feel like lore is easier to do right.
I could agree with that. Lore could also be done wrong. I've had some people that like get so excited about the lore in their game that they go into it and then it starts to become like, I don't know, exposition. Like this town was 2,000 years old, blah blah blah. Do you have the thing that breaks those blocks yet? Can't the
No.
Oh, is that Firebrand form that does that?
It's either the Buster Shot or the Time Crest. Usually the Buster Shot is one of the first things you get.
Now, I said this in my most recent review that I personally think that a story doesn't matter in a Metroidvania game as long as it pushes the player forward. And when I say that, that's also a criticism of games that pause the player's gameplay for the sake of a story that doesn't really entice or isn't interesting.
I really like the way BioShock did it, where it just does the audio log and then you can either do it or not do it. Like listen to it or not listen to it.
Right. Or like me, I run around and fight while I'm listening to the dialogue, and then I'm not really listening to the dialogue. And my wife's
ask if you're good enough.
What? Yeah, I'm usually when I played it, which was like 10 years ago at this point, I wasn't very good at listening to both at the same time.
I think I'm gonna just purposely suicide here.
Yeah, audio logs are, I think, a good way to present story or lore while also letting the player do other things. Though, in the games that I've seen do audio logs, I mean, I guess I haven't really played that many. They, I think that the presentation is really samey between games that go with audio logs, and that generally the games will just kind of have the same information in the audio logs.
Yeah, Salmice is saying that he thinks audio logs are really boring. I think it depends on the game.
Yeah.
Back in the day when we were playing Resident Evil 2 for the first time, or the original Resident Evil for that matter, we really loved reading the diaries that you would find lying around, which is kind of what the audio logs evolved in, or the diaries evolved into the audio logs. I think Resident Evil is a bit of a slower paced game, so reading diaries makes more sense in that context too. Whereas Bioshock is definitely more of a heavy action style game. I don't remember the audio logs in Bioshock well. I mean, there's a couple of them that were really interesting. Mostly it was driving home the point that everybody's just gone insane because they all follow this philosophy, and it was an exploration of the results of exploring that extreme philosophy, which makes it a great game to discuss, I think. But then you have someone from the rMetroidvania Discord that absolutely disliked Bioshock entirely, regardless of the story, which I think is interesting. I don't know if it was necessarily a limitation of the hardware. When the PlayStation came out and the Resident Evil games came out, I think they could have done audio diaries. There might have been a RAM issue running both at the same time. I don't know the technicals on that, but I think they could have done audio diaries.
You're saying for Resident Evil?
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard the quality of the English translation, I'm sure.
Another yeah, no, that
that
would have made the game better.
Yeah.
I think another argument against that being a technical limitation is that the remake of Resident Evil 2 still uses text diaries, and that could be trying to emulate the game it's updating. But I think there have been Resident Evil games that still use text diaries. It's just a choice, I think.
I feel like a really bad audio log can pull you out of the experience more so than just a poorly worded diary.
So in my opinion, I think a good story is a game that has an interesting idea or philosophy to convey and does it in a good way. And of course, this is entirely subjective to my personal interpretation of the story, but that's what I personally enjoy when it comes to a story. It's why I like Iconoclast. I think that game is easy to discuss. There are a lot of different ideas conveyed, and it has a lot of interesting answers to those ideas. That makes it an interesting game to discuss from a story perspective. A good story could also have a positive outlook or message to convey, even if the story itself is not necessarily profound.
I haven't played Iconoclast. I have this weird bias where I just assume that any game that is story focused is just terrible. I don't know where it comes from, but I have it.
I thought the gameplay in Iconoclast was higher quality. I'm not going to say it's like necessarily Hollow Knight levels, but it had some good boss fights, and the puzzles are the kind of puzzles that you don't like, but I like the puzzles in that game.
I actually quit playing Iconoclast because it had just too much dialogue.
See, and then that's an example. The way Iconoclast presents its story is more similar to a JRPG than it is what you would typically see in a Metroidvania. So I mean, you could argue that isn't a good way to present a story, especially in a Metroidvania setting. That's one of the great things about Super Metroid is I think that it has a. I love this. Might as well, right? Is there any? There's no like achievement type unlock for not dying, is there?
No. But achievements in the Super Nintendo?
Well, I mean, even in the Super Nintendo era, they occasionally did things like you had to beat the game.
I forgot that this thing was here.
Oh, the slowdown.
So is this RetroArch emulating the SNES normal slowdown pretty well? Is that?
I think that that's just trying to be the same.
I like how your rate of fire slowly increases as it gets closer.
Noi to Love. I haven't actually played Noi to Love 2. I should check out. Like after playing an Entitled Story this last week, I'm actually interested in checking out the earlier games that developers that I like have made. It's interesting to see how far they've come and how they could do something new using their old ideas that might end up being really awesome. Like, is it David Yu or the guy who does Spelunky? I'm getting his name wrong. But the Spelunky dev worked on Aquaria. And after playing Aquaria, I'm like, they end the game on a cliffhanger for a sequel that's never going to happen. It might not ever happen. I'd really like to see that sequel be made. That game's a story-focused game, I would say. Aquaria is. But as I was saying about Super Metroid kind of set a standard of how you could present a story that has a lot of layers to it without pushing it on the player.
That's probably my favorite kind of presentation. One that's indirect.
I actually think Aquaria was a lot of people's first games on Steam. If they got any indie games when Steam first came out, I think Aquaria was on the list of some of the earliest options.
Yes.
So Caldrath, is there anything behind these windows when you... I noticed you just broke one little pane.
Oh, yeah. They just randomly have coins in them.
Okay. What do the coins do? I haven't seen a shop, or did I miss a shop?
I went in the shop and then was like, oh, this is just a shop, and then left immediately.
Is there anything useful in the shops? Like anything permanent upgrades or anything like that?
There's potions and spells.
And the spells are one-time use, or?
Yeah, they're all consumables. Yeah. Like there's healing potions, which are actually useful against some of the harder bosses. Like the secret final boss is kind of like... You probably can't beat it without potions because it just fills the screen with stuff. To the point that it's not reasonable to dodge everything.
So they're sort of like cheats that you buy.
I mean, if you consider potions to be cheats.
It depends on how the game's designed.
I usually just never use consumables. And I like it that way.
Wow, you got a heart piece just from breaking... That's what makes this a true Metroidvania, is finding something that powerful and in such a mundane place.
Yeah, was that random, or is that like a specific heart piece?
That's a specific one.
So when I play this game, if I play this game, should I just break everything?
Yeah. That gets you money too.
That's true of any Metroidvania game, really. Shoot every wall, break every thing.
Imagine if Dark Souls had stuff hidden inside of, barrels.
I break the barrels anyway, because it's fun. It seems like this form is your best form when it comes to dealing damage to anything that's on the ground, because I think you get multiple hits as it flames through them.
No, it does deal double damage, but it only hits them once.
So how many hearts do you end up having by the end?
You end up with 2 rows of them.
So, Caldrath, I know you're playing, but do you have any examples of, besides Bioshock, of what might be a great video game story?
Let's see. Well, that one's clearly my favorite, but I guess I liked Final Fantasy VII at the time.
You don't like it anymore?
At the time, it like specifically meshed with my current teen angst. I'd probably be really pissed off at all the characters if I replayed it.
I don't know. I think I appreciate it more now as an adult than when I was a kid, personally. And yeah, Undertale did a lot of interesting things. Salome's brought up Undertale.
But yeah, all these bottles I'm picking up are like just so you can put potions in them.
Oh, so you gotta find the bottles before you can buy the potion.
Oh, and are the spells the same way? You have those spell scrolls, or?
Yeah.
I need to play Lisa. Salome's brought up Lisa.
I actually own it, but I haven't played it.
I own it too. I own every game that I want to play eventually.
Yeah.
The game I'm playing right now, Batbarian, narrative was something that... So I did that developer spotlight, and that was something that the developer was focused on, was narrative. And I was really expecting something more like Iconoclasts. Looks like you're stuck.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to just kill myself.
So wait, the bosses respawn if you go and fight them again?
Some of them do.
Yeah, I heard that Lisa's got a harsh message overall. I was expecting something more like Iconoclast when I started Barbarian, but it actually isn't. It's
It takes me back here.
it's actually very gameplay focused. There is a story, and it's funny, and it's that was the other thing, is that they mentioned it was he mentioned it was a comedy on the store page, and it's funny, but when you think comedy, you think like dumb, silly things happening all the time, and it's not like that at all. It's more of just kind of a whimsical journey that funny things happen in, but everything's still kind of a little bit serious. It's like the Ghostbusters style of funny, and not the Ghostbusters 2016 style of funny.
So how do you guys feel about... this is a bit off topic. How do you feel about when games will just lock you in an area until you get through it?
To me, that's on my list of cardinal sins that Metroidvania games can commit. There are times when it can be useful, but like if you lock somebody into fighting a boss, there better be some way to, like, one of the advantages of being a Metroidvania is that if you're ever having difficulty with any section of the game, you can always go and explore somewhere else. It's sort of like leveling up in an RPG, except it's not grinding, because exploration is one of the gameplay features. And so if a Metroidvania locks you into a boss so that you can't go and explore afterwards, I feel that that's missing part of what one of the advantages of being a Metroidvania.
I would have to agree.
There's a game I should show one of these nights called Kingdom of the Dragon. It does that on the first boss, and that game is just brutally difficult.
But how much is there possibly to explore before the first boss?
I believe I could have gotten an attack upgrade if I had, if I was able to explore before the boss. I mean, I could have, because it was the first boss, I could have just started the game over, but that's kind of lame too, you know?
So I know a complaint for Environmental Station Alpha, for an example, is that some bosses just lock you in until you can beat the boss. But at that point in the game, there's not really much you can get while exploring. Like it's usually it's before you can get the stuff that increases your damage output. So maybe you could have gotten one more health upgrade. But I think those scale so that you get less health as you go, or maybe it's just always a low amount. But if a boss does 4 damage per hit and you get 2 more health, it's not particularly helpful.
Sure. Environmental Station Alpha is very light on the health upgrades in the first place, too. Did they actually lock you into any boss fights, though? I can't remember any situation where that happens.
I think you're locked in on the that one terrible parasite boss.
I think you can leave the ship. I think it's funny how you hate that boss, because that's actually one of my favorite bosses.
Well, I think so. You need the gold access card to get back out, because the way you went in was one way. And then, like, to get back out, you have to go through this little gauntlet that teaches you how the keycard works.
Oh, like if you save right before the boss. I think that might be true. I think you might be right. Huh. I never actually thought about that being an issue. Did you mean to select stage, Kaldroth, and...
Yeah, so
select the
this
wrong one?
area, if it's burning right now and has the ceiling, but if you come back later, then the forest is all burned down, and then...
Oh, you get secrets. So you went and got it burnt so you can come back and...
Yeah, I was thinking if just retrying would let it happen, but apparently not the case.
Interesting. I like it when... go ahead.
I was gonna say, I have a friend who's been playing through Environmental Station Alpha, and I know he got stuck on that boss for a while. And he was kind of irritated he couldn't just go do something else, that he had to fight the boss to reduce.
It kind of depends on the game design, too, because Environmental Station Alpha, you can technically beat the entire game with 1 HP. The bosses are designed well enough that you can no-damage them in a reasonable... with a reasonable amount of practice. This game that I was referring to, I don't know if that's necessarily feasible to no damage it. So I was going to mention that I really like games that update environments permanently. I guess maybe you have to fight a boss before.
Yeah.
I also love when environments change.
That's an interesting aspect of Metroidvania level design that I think is underused.
Right? It's like such a good way to keep up with the player when you have them going through old areas.
Yeah. I mean, you could always... I've always thought in this game you should probably be able to just combine forms.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll just add new monsters to old areas, like with what Hollow Knight did, and I guess technically that that one updated the area a little bit as well, but it's not as robust as like Environmental Station Alpha. Basically the entire station changes over the course of the game, which I found really neat. It's also really neat playing on New Game Plus with all the powers and being able to check out the station and explore areas you wouldn't normally be able to explore, with the station not altered from what you normally would do throughout the course of the game. And I agree. I think that Demon's Crest needs a sequel, especially now that it's not like required to make your game 3D like it was back in the late 90s. It'd be cool to see this game be updated with a new 2D platformer. So is this guy weak against the air attack?
The air attack just does more damage in general.
Oh, okay.
It's just there's a lot of bosses that are immune to it.
Does it do more damage than the earth form?
Honestly, I don't know. I just remember that the Earth does double the damage of the basic fire.
Hmm. So what other topics that we that came up? What other topics came up this week? We were talking about objectivity versus subjectivity.
We do that every week.
I know, but like on the Thursday afterward, or after the stream last week, and we were talking about. I'm like, maybe we should save this for the stream, and I can't remember where that conversation was going.
I guess we have to search for that phrase in the text chat.
5,000 results.
Salme says that we shouldn't talk about objectivity versus subjectivity. He's like, again? Well, one thing I wanted to ask is, what is the use of criticism if subjectivity is such a major factor?
Well, I think you can say that something is better because it includes something, but or worse because it does, but you can't necessarily say something is bad overall.
Hey, we haven't talked about whether or not this game is a Metroidvania yet, Salmes.
Obviously, this is a crest-like.
It can't be a crest-like, though.
Yeah, so you chose this game because in some vague way it's related to Metroidvanias, right?
Yeah. It has stability gating and backtracking. It's just it has a stage select.
I see. Do you think this game's format could work in a Metroidvania setting?
I mean, I consider it to not be one because of the stage select.
Well,
But, like, you could probably, like, remake it so that it was a Metroidvania.
I mean, like, would it be fun with all these different forms? You have to keep going to the menu to change.
I mean, that's just like a UI problem. Like, they literally had the L and R buttons and didn't use them.
They didn't use the L and R buttons at all?
I don't think they don't do anything.
Wow. How early was this game in the SNES's life? Like, was it going to be an NES game and they updated it, or?
I think it's pretty late. It uses the 4, like, face buttons.
I kind of wonder about the technical limitations sometimes. Like, was there a reason why they didn't use the L and R buttons to do something like weapon switching? Or did they just not have the imagination to do it at the time?
Yeah, I don't know if this is before or after Mega Man X.
Because, like, we've talked about, like, some of the issues with Super Metroid and its controls. And a lot of its control issues were resolved with the Game Boy Advance games, which had 2 less buttons than the Super Nintendo. So Super Metroid clearly could have not had the problems it had if they had just designed it differently.
Yeah, some things are just advances in game design and not necessarily technology.
Right.
True.
But weapon switching...
Also, there is no sprint button in Zero Mission, is there?
No, there isn't. You just run fast the longer you run.
So, like, what button would you choose to hold down the entire game? If not, you know, since there's less face buttons.
I'm sorry, you mean you like holding down a button the entire game, or?
Well, like, no, I just mean if you have a game where you, like, if you were able to sprint in Zero Mission, the controls might have been a bit wonkier.
Right. But I'm saying that Super Metroid could have done the same design and just got rid of the sprint button.
They could have.
I think the game would have been better for it.
I mean, You do go pretty fast when you sprint, though. That might be too fast for some people to handle.
That might be true. I mean, it is nice that you have the ability to go faster right from the beginning of the game. I like how Barbarian does it. Once you get the sprint ability, you sprint all the time, and you hold down the button to go slow.
It's like you say, though, advances in game design, there's a large time gap between the two games.
It is really interesting that some of the things they didn't think about. But I mean, maybe real-time weapon switching was a technical issue as well. Like, that's the meme, right? With when the PlayStation 3 was coming out, they're like, real-time weapon switching, everyone! Like, that was such a big deal. What do those relics do that you have called out, the talismans? I figure that the armor reduces the damage you take, but what do the other two do?
So crown increases the money drops, skull increases health drops, and armor is damage reduction.
Oh, it sounds like armor's just better.
Yeah, I gotta take a break for a second though, sorry.
It's all good.
I love it when games or consoles or what have you just when they market stuff based on just concepts that like anyone who's played a video game already understands. That makes sense.
Could you imagine being the person who has to make the text on the back of a box of a video game? Like, it's funny some of the things that they put on as features of the game.
Yeah.
What's also funny is when developers do their own store pages and they have no idea what to put as features on their game. Some people need a lot of help with that. Especially when it's apparent that they're not native English speaking and they're trying to make their store page for the English speaking audience.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you can jump in this game.
Right. I've actually seen that as a feature. My favorite are the tags that you can see on there as well. The Choices Matter tag is an interesting one that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
So many tags just don't mean anything.
Alright, sorry about that. Now let's fight this boss for the third time.
Codrith, what's your favorite meaningless Steam store tag?
Meaningless what?
Meaningless Steam store tag.
Metroidvania.
Now, I'm noticing that we've seen 3 bosses this entire game so far. We had the big snake.
We had the jelly monster too.
Oh, the jelly monster. Jelly monster was cool. You only saw him once.
Yeah.
How come we didn't fight him 4 times?
Because it needs a very specific room. There was also that skeleton with a sword, and then the, like, thing that threw the head at you.
He's just trying to get ahead in life.
I think all their boss budget just went into their first boss.
So, Salmace, what's a question that you have for us? If you want us to avoid talking about objectivity versus subjectivity.
If you don't like the topic, you gotta suggest a new one.
Atmospheric may be the worst tag. I think if there's anything that is subjective, atmospheric would be pretty high on the list.
What about great soundtrack? Like, there are some games where it's clear there's a focus on the soundtrack over other aspects of the game. Like, that boss battler game. I don't remember the name of it.
Man, I think soundtrack needs to be... Oh, actually, that is a good question. We were talking about that earlier on the site Discord. Salmace asks, what is the best map system in any Metroidvania that you've played? And what makes a good map system? Let's start with which one's the best one of the games you've played?
Hollow Knight.
That was my answer.
Just gonna
That was my
drop that
answer,
in
but I like how Caldroth is now Tedevil.
Well, there's pretty much just Hollow Knight and then the Super Metroid style one.
That was what that's what brought up the subject. Is there was a screenshot from the upcoming Castle in the Darkness 2, and it has basically the same map as Symphony of the Night.
Oh, okay.
And Salme said that he was tired of seeing that map.
Yeah. That's how you know it's a Metroidvania, though.
Yeah.
So Hollow Knight isn't a Metroidvania?
Well, no, it's not. It's not an exclusive statement. Usually when you say, if it has this, then this, you actually mean that. Also, if it doesn't have this, then it's not this. But that's wrong. Stop being wrong.
So, what do you think we could do to improve the Symphony of the Night? Okay, so what makes Hollow Knight the best map system? Let's go with that question.
I didn't really think about it that much. I just kind of said that because I thought it would offend people. Because I know a lot of people hate the Hollow Knight map.
I think it's funny that I admit that is a bit of a controversial opinion, but when I think of the best map, that is actually my favorite map, is Hollow Knight's map.
I actually do like it though.
It
new
actually
boss.
looks like a map that you would make as a map.
Yeah, it looks like a real map. I like how you get the rough part of the map. I mean, it's basically the same thing that map stations do in some Metroidvanias, but I like how you just have a very rough map and you fill it out by actually exploring it.
Yeah, there's the immersive aspect of it. I like that you can see the knight holding the map as you move around and hold down the button. I also like how it doesn't tell you where you are on the map without an item equipped, because it forces you to kind of look at the landmarks around you. And it puts you more into the game's world. Like, I play so many Metroidvania games where I remember the map more than I remember the world itself. And Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of those games, and that should not be a game where I remember the map more because of how gorgeous that game looks. Salme's just mentioned that the new map in Death's Gambit looks really cool. That game didn't have a map initially, did it? I don't think it did. So that's cool that it's adding a map.
Could you maybe send a link?
Yeah, Salme, if you could link it in the Twitch chat, that would be wonderful.
Oh yeah, so I've just been relying on Q to read off the comments. I've just been watching the stream on Discord.
Yeah, there
So I
was
want to actually hear the audio. I should probably pull up for Twitch so I can respond to people.
We haven't had Cactor or Silver Ant or anybody join. Okay, so Salme's just linked it. Some of these health upgrades you get, you just kind of trip over.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, here, have a health upgrade.
I was unfortunately too late to see the link.
Oh, here, I'll relink it. One sec.
So what other ways can you actually do a Metroidvania map?
Salmes, could you link that one more time? Well, to be honest, in my opinion, Hollow Knight is closest to the ideal that I would think of, but that's partially because I just don't have the imagination to think of a better way of doing it. Even with that said, though, I know that that's like one of the criticisms that people levy against Hollow Knight, so in some ways I'm fine with how Symphony of the Night does it to a degree. I like it when there's a mini map, like Super Metroid had it, and the reason for that is because you don't have to constantly pause the game to check where you are.
Right. Hollow Knight, I like having to hold down the map button and like opening up the map on your character to actually see the map.
Yeah, that immersive aspect is really neat. Salme's linked it again. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, this looks extremely familiar.
What does it remind you of?
That's a good question.
I'm gonna have to put a picture of the map on the video when I upload this to YouTube, so everybody's like could be on the same page.
I mean, it kind of looks like the world map on Hollow Knight.
Yeah, like a zoomed out version of it.
Yeah.
That's cool that they're adding a map. I think that's great. It kind of reminds me of like a vector map, kind of like I don't know, Metroid Prime or something. So Caldra's a fish now. I look down at the map on Death's Gambit and I look back up and he's a fish man.
What is your favorite form?
I guess the time form.
Isn't that the best form?
Yeah. It gives you double defense and it has the like best projectile. Like the best fire projectile does the same amount of damage, but the hitbox is a little bit lower, like thinner, so it's a little harder to hit enemies with.
I want to comment real quick while you're here. The background on this area is really cool. The way it has the statue in the background.
Oh yeah, like parallaxing and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like it's not tiled or anything. It's like they use an actual picture back there.
Interesting. So how many times have you played through this game?
Probably like 6. But at one point I got to like I had a save state on the final boss, like the 100% final boss, and I just sat there and played it over and over and over again, trying to beat it without getting hit.
It's not possible.
Well, okay, so there's the 100% one, and then after you beat the 100% one, you get a password, and then you can fight the like secret final boss, and that one's the like near impossible one.
Hmm. This game is based off of an enemy from Ghouls and Ghosts, or Ghosts and Goblins. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a really difficult boss, since that's what Ghosts and Goblins is notorious for.
Yeah.
So the map in Vigil, the Longest Night, it's not that memorable to me. That has just like it's like a drawing, right? And most of the Vigil is very freeform in the way its level design works. Like the reason why Symphony of the Night's map works so well for Symphony of the Night is because the level design fits very well into a grid. Whereas Vigil is more like they took a giant drawing of a landscape and then turned it into I guess landscape's not the right word for it. But it's like they drew it out on a piece of paper rather than using tiles to do it. Welcome, Muckworm. I guess that's another topic we could talk about. How do we feel about when Metroidvania games mark things on the map, like where secrets are?
I like when... Well, I guess I think the best way to do it would... At some point later in the game you have an item you can get that will mark the rooms that secrets are in, whether you've gotten them or not. Like, I like knowing where on the map secrets are, but also I feel like that knowledge can be... Like, it has to be earned somehow.
Mm.
Yeah, like if you immediately get all of the, like, know where everything is, then it kind of ruins the secret gathering thing. But then if you're trying to 100%, you just want to know.
I kind of like how Monster Boy did it. You got these rare drops, these rainbow... I think they're literally called rainbow drops. that you can trade into a special store, and then they'll give you a hint where like a treasure chest is.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's a good idea to go back to get all the chests that you kind of know where they are, and then go start purchasing these things. The downside to that is if you abuse it, then you kind of have to grind to get the rainbow drops.
Yeah, I am a fan of hints. Hints are cool.
Now, I think that if you very clearly see the object on the screen, but you can't reach it, I like the idea of the game marking automatically on your map where that is, because sometimes you'll, like Muckworm is mentioning Alwa's Legacy, and that game has those blue orbs that you go after. Did you actually play Alwa's Legacy, Caldroth?
Yeah.
Okay, I figured you did, since you caught my mistake last Friday.
No, I just
which I appreciate. Well, it was clearly on the screen, so it wouldn't have surprised me if you figured it out. But which that is completely a facepalm. I can't believe I went through the entire game without knowing that. But anyway, you have the blue orbs in Always Legacy, and there's 99 of them. And maybe you've seen one on the screen, but you couldn't reach it because you didn't have the power at the time. Remembering where everything was can be really difficult.
That's why you need stickers on your map that you can just put everywhere.
I don't remember if Always Legacy had that or not, but yeah, it is nice when they at least give you the option of marking something on your map. The game I'm playing, Batbarian, has that, which is nice.
How long have you been playing Batbarian?
I think I'm up to 6 hours on it now.
Like, I just remember you saying several other times that you've been playing Batbarian.
Oh,
But you already got through it.
oh, what else have I said? I don't think I started playing it until like Friday last week.
Really? Must have been something else that weird. Maybe you said you were going to start it.
Maybe I did. I'm getting a little deja vu here, Caldroth. Is there another similar secret to like the one you just found?
There's a lot of things that are just like, break the wall and there's stuff behind it. I mean, that's how it is in every game that has breakable walls. So you might remember from this game, or you might remember it from any of hundreds of other games.
Sure. No, I feel like that we had a secret that similar to the one you just got, but I could have just not been paying enough attention.
What are the best ways to do secrets? How should you hide them in your map?
So I really like how Metroid Zero Mission does it. It was going off of, it's a remake of one of the worst games when it comes to just bombing everything. I was wondering why you went back to the village, and I didn't realize that there was a whole level off to the right because I hadn't been paying attention. I'm like, why are we going back to the village? What's in the village? So Metroid Zero Mission, they take all of the bombable walls that you have to do, and if it's not like visually apparent that you can bomb a wall, they'll usually put like an enemy on the opposite side of it to give you an idea that there's something over there. They do a really good job telegraphing it in creative ways, like not always the same way. It's not always just like a cracked wall. It's a way that awards your observation skills without becoming too repetitive. But also there's plenty of games that just do exactly what he's doing right now. the illusionary wall that you just pass through.
So I'm of the opinion that games generally should not mix breakable walls and illusionary walls. Like
Should be one
Rabby
or the
Ribby.
other.
Yeah, Rabby Ribby had both of them, and it meant that every time I had to check a wall, I had to throw the bomb down and then slide into the wall and then jump against the wall. It just makes wall checks take longer.
I can agree with that. I don't really necessarily remember that aspect of Robbie Ribby, but I did not 100% that game by any means. Salme says he likes the mixture. I think, well, I mean, I'll go back to what I said. I like it when they're telegraphed at least a little bit.
Yeah.
I've
One of
got
the other problems is that there's a lot of unmarked walls there, so you have to do wall checks.
yeah. Salme says that Robbie Ribby is perfect, and I like Robbie Ribby a lot. I'm not going to disagree with that. Did you start playing Robbie Ribby recently, Caldrath?
I played it, I started playing it a long time ago, and then I quit because of all the dialogue. And then I realized that I could just skip it. And so I did that, and then I actually enjoyed the game afterwards.
Yeah,
You just quit games whenever there's dialogue.
Yeah, pretty much.
No life to read, no turning the phone.
it's a very interesting game when it comes to the dialogue. Oh, can you go down to the slug's room? Oh, no, it just teleports you out.
Yeah, some of the bosses don't come back.
I think Robbie Ribby is fantastic, but it's really it's an interesting game to play in a house where people could walk in on you playing it.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. Like, it's one I wouldn't mind showing off in a stream, but I would read the dialogue. I would if I ever streamed that game.
Yeah, I want to know what the chill gargoyle dude is saying.
Oh, so something that Barbarian does that's interesting is there's a lot of clever design in that game. Like, I'm really enjoying playing it. But, so you have different enemy types like ghosts and stuff, and a lot of times when they have ghosts in games, you can still hit them with all of your same weapons that you are normally able to hit them with. In Barbarian, you have your bat, which has its light source, and that's how you kill ghosts, is you shine the light from your bat onto the ghosts. The Barbarian can't do anything with it.
Yes.
So it's kind of neat that they pay attention to damage types like that. I think that an Epic had a few enemies like that where you couldn't even hurt it with your weapon.
I just realized these aren't gargoyles, are they? Because gargoyles have to have, like, water. These are grotesques.
Wait, gargoyles have to spew water?
Isn't that how it works?
I thought that gargoyles are just what they had on the outside of cathedrals.
I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. So Salme says that if I play Robbie Ribby, I have to do the voices. I'm not sure which voices he's referring to, but Erina is. I pronounce her name with even though it's a Taiwanese game, for some reason I want to pronounce it the Japanese way. Erina, I'll call her that. That's probably the best American way of pronouncing it. I'm gonna give her the gruff voice, like, "Oh no, I'm a buddy now. What's going on? Why am I wearing a swimsuit?"
Sounds like you're trying to be like Batman.
That's not my Batman voice. Batman voice is like, "What are you doing, Joker? What are you going down there?" Obviously, I don't practice voices at all.
So, would you like the Merriam-Webster definition or the Wikipedia definition?
Give us both. Let's see how they compare.
Oh, okay. Merriam-Webster. A spout in the form of a grotesque human or animal figure projecting from a roof gutter to throw rainwater clear of a building.
Oh, so it's for what is it called? Aquadynamics?
Yeah, so gargoyles are actually spouts carved with the likeness of a grotesque. So unless these dudes are just like constantly spewing water out of their mouths, I don't think they're gargoyles.
Well, this one's a gargoyle for sure.
Yeah, maybe that one is. So it's probably taking in water through its mouth because it's a fish. It's kind of the opposite of what gargoyle is supposed to do. Who knows?
I never actually knew that the gargoyles started to function. I thought they were just there as a decoration.
Yeah, they're supposed to ward off demons, right?
Right. Well, I mean that could be the function that I would have expected. I didn't know that there was an actual like architectural function to it. I think the reason why I'm having deja vu is because you keep going back to areas you've been before.
Yeah. I keep forgetting where I'm going.
You're almost at 100% already, though. You only have a few... Well, I mean, you have a lot of hearts you still need to find, but...
Can you just go, like, beat the boss?
Technically, you can go beat him
Good.
anytime.
Yeah.
I think you get a bad ending unless you have all the stuff, though.
Yeah, there's different endings based on it.
So I find it interesting that they made it so the winged form takes damage when you're underwater. I wonder why they made that decision. Like, they could have made it so you couldn't fly and that you couldn't even use your attack, but actually take damage. Is an interesting choice.
Yeah.
So Samas was pointing out that unepic enemies had weaknesses, which I think I can appreciate that. That's something I think that was lost in the later Souls-like games, is like the original Demon Souls, every enemy had a blunt or piercing or slashing weakness value, and having different weapon types throughout the game was actually useful. And in later games, it was better to just specialize in one weapon because it didn't really matter for most of the game.
Even with, like, Dark Souls 1, you kind of just pick one weapon and you upgrade it as much as you can because materials are scarce unless you know exactly where to go to find them all.
There's enough of a weakness, there's enough benefit from targeting weaknesses that I will keep more than one weapon of different types just to hit certain weaknesses, but for the most part, yeah, it's better to... Was that just floating off in the air over there?
Yeah, that was the one that I was talking about. They needed to wait until the forest actually burned down.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that is basically where the entirety of an epic's nuances come from, is from exploiting weaknesses and having the right weapon types or spells for any situation.
That's nice. Weaknesses are fun.
They can be, yeah. It always kind of makes me sad when developers just kind of ignore the idea or the concept.
Do most of the Castlevania games have enemies with weaknesses?
I think so.
Like, they have it, but I don't think it really matters that much.
Well, those games are generally easy enough as it is, but... Like, Order of Ecclesia, I remember very clearly that weaknesses, or elemental weaknesses, was a major factor. And of course, the holy element was the best element because you're fighting vampires.
I think Circle of the Moon had more weakness stuff, partly because it's harder unless you grind a bunch.
There's a cliff up above you there, Caldroth. I guess we missed it.
Yep. I don't remember where all of the things remaining are. I've got all the bottles. I got all the vellums. This is in the last level, and there's another health thing in the last level, and then there's also a headbutt challenge thing to get a health thing.
Are you gonna do the headbutt challenge?
Yeah. I need to just go back and restart this level.
Okay, because I saw like a cliff on that last screen, like above at the end.
Yeah, that's probably one of them.
Those are the
Or
worst.
I could just do the headbutt challenge now.
Those are the worst places to explore when you have a wide open area that everything looks the same. Like desert levels tend to be the worst levels because of that.
Don't you mean sewer levels?
Sewer levels can be hit or miss. I've seen some sewer levels done decently well. I think the biggest problem with sewer levels is that it's just we're tired of them.
This is the hardest part of the game.
I can tell.
How many do you have to hit?
I forget.
Like, it doesn't even put a score on the screen or anything.
Maybe I feel like Circle the Moon had more stuff with weaknesses because it's easier to quickly swap an element to something else with the way the card system works. It's like you have a card that applies an element to your weapon for extra damage or something, and you can just change it to a different one if it doesn't seem to be as effective.
When you said Circle of the Moon, for some reason I was thinking Curse of the Moon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I got a new relic that lets me shoot an extra projectile.
So I've been told on multiple occasions, oh that's nice. I've been told on multiple occasions that I did not like Circle of the Moon as much as I should have. Oh, so that's the cliff I was talking about.
Yeah. I don't think there was anything in there that I missed, but I guess I can double check.
Okay, so we have been in here before then.
Yeah.
So what do people say when they say you didn't like Circle of the Moon enough?
Well, like some people, it's their favorite Castlevania, which I think is great. And so, of course, when it's not my favorite Castlevania, it's not. That can be disappointing.
How dare you not have exactly the same opinions as me?
Well, I think you said that it wasn't your favorite either, right?
Oh no, it's not my favorite.
But usually when somebody says it's not my favorite, they mean that they don't like it.
Yeah, I'm saying that in response to someone asking me if it's my favorite.
Sure.
So, I'm not saying it in a polite way.
This is the hardest. This is the hardest thing about doing like rankings and stuff is that like because I would put that on the bottom ranking, people are like, "Oh, you hated it," and I'm like, "No, I'm just listing it with other Castlevania games."
Yeah.
Harmony's
Like,
worse.
oh man, you put this at the bottom of your top 10 list?
Right.
So good though.
Right. Why is this number 10? And it doesn't mean that. It's
Yeah, I will fight you though if you say Harmony of Dissonance is better.
well,
I did not like.
I will say what I like more about Harmony of Dissonance is that there's no grinding in Harmony of Dissonance. So Salmes asks, sci-fi Metroidvanias or fantasy Metroidvanias, what is your favorite?
It's well. What if something's both?
Isn't all fantasy sci-fi?
Okay, so when we say fantasy, we usually mean
Isn't all
Tolkien.
sci-fi fantasy?
We usually mean Tolkien style fantasy. I guess what would you classify this as? This would have to be fantasy.
Yeah.
Like this is one step away from being a Castlevania game in terms of theming. So I've been asked this question before, and honestly, like I like Metroid more than Castlevania, but that's more of a design thing than it is a setting thing.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, I do particularly like sci-fi just in general more than fantasy, but with a Metroidvania, I don't really care that much as long as it's an interesting game. I feel like generic sci-fi is used less often than generic fantasy, though.
So Salme says that you people are from the George R.R. Martin school, where we all think that all fantasy is sci-fi. I mean, technically, all science fiction is a form of fantasy. To be honest, I probably would lean a little bit more towards sci-fi, like if I were to pick. And the reason why is because I feel that it's easier to make So as I mentioned, what I consider a good story is a story that presents an idea or philosophy that is interesting, that you can think about. And I think that sci-fi has more ways that it can do that, because it can explore the idea of if our technology went this direction, how would it affect society? Now, sci-fi doesn't always do that. A lot of times, sci-fi uses the technology simply as a fantasy tool. But sometimes they do. Like, they take a specific idea and say, if we had this technology, this is how society would react to it. That's basically what BioShock is about.
Yeah, see, that's why people often say things are space operas instead of calling them sci-fi if they don't really have much going on.
Right. Yeah, I think in order for it to become a science fiction, it needs to have some semblance of realism, or at least take a mundane world and add the technology to it in a way that would be plausible, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Whereas, like,
Possibility is probably a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily, you're not necessarily saying hard science fiction, where it's like something kind of realistic based on our current knowledge, and the author actually knows what science is, different than just being plausible.
Now, I'm going to contradict myself. There are some fantasy situations that I really enjoy. I like it when fantasy is well explained and the rules are well defined, especially if those rules are interesting. Like, for instance, this is going to sound really nerdy, but like Hunter x Hunter and its Nen system is fascinating to me. I think it's an interesting idea, and it's a good springboard for creating a world. Even though the concept by itself is pure fantasy. So I don't know. I guess in conclusion, I don't have a preference.
I prefer sci-fi in general, but I don't think being sci-fi makes a Metroidvania any better.
Yeah, I'm afraid the guy's going to die before they finish that manga. My friend kept sending me the updates, like whenever he come back from vacation after 6 months. So Salme said that Hunter x Hunter is a manga that's never going to end. And the author takes like 6-month breaks after making like 4 pages. It's the worst.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, the worst part about it is that he's got some good stuff going that could be really interesting, but it's going to take forever to get there.
So, Coldruth, how do you decide where to go? Like on the world map?
Well, you just fly around and you can. It's kind of like Secret of Mana, where you can just fly around and then you swoop in on wherever.
So I meant, like, what specifically are you doing?
There's one health upgrade that I don't remember where it is.
We could just not pick it up.
So, if you don't 100% the game, then you don't get the, final boss.
So for a second there, I thought that Caldra's character was wearing sunglasses in this form. Like, he's just this big red dude with dark sunglasses.
Maybe he is.
Yu Yu Hakusho actually ended, though, so... Salmes is talking about how Hunter x Hunter, the main character's arc, just ends, and then he just kind of does another arc after that. And I'm going to... I mean, I don't know if it was ever about Gon as the main character, and I think that right now they're going off of another character. I think that you could argue that the story has always been a little bit about that character, so continuing with that character's arc after they finish Gon's arc makes sense to me. And now we can stop talking about Hunter x Hunter because both Cauldroth and Master have no idea what we're talking about.
I've seen a little bit of Hunter x Hunter. Boy, I don't think I've been to this area.
The only thing I know about it is that the song people use for the "Wait, It's Always X" meme is from that show, and I like that song. So I guess I have a good impression of Hunter.
I highly recommend it. It's probably my favorite. I haven't watched a lot of anime, so it's not really a strong statement for me to say, but it's probably my favorite shonen style anime.
I will keep that in mind when I watch. In 2 years, when I decide to watch another anime, I guess. Don't really watch that much TV. Alright, I had something to say, but I was distracted, and I don't remember what it was. Oh, right, now I do remember. Okay. So how do you feel about when franchises continue existing even after, like, the story of the characters has ended?
Depends on where the story goes. I mean, if you really think about it, there is no such thing as an ending in real life.
Well, there's death.
Sure, but there's still people that live after you. I think one of the most profound stories that I read, short stories I read in like high school, was this short story called "There Will Soft Rains Come," and it was basically just a story of a building with all of its technology running and everything, and apparently all of the people had died. And it was just describing that even after people are gone, the Earth would still have precipitation, and that even though people die, things never end, which is interesting. It's an interesting idea to think about. Existential, of course. Yeah, and actually Salmes brings up JoJo as an interesting idea of continuing the story after an arc ends. JoJo is very... I don't want to use the word episodic because obviously it has episodes within episodes, but the different arcs have definitive beginnings and ends, but the continuation has been good. In spite of the fact that they've ended specific character stories.
I kind of ask the question in the context of, like, you do have things like JoJo where it's a different story, but it's still interesting because it's expanding upon the universe, and the universe is interesting, and sometimes the characters carry over. But then you have other franchises that are they're just being milked, obviously.
Sure. What's a good example of that?
Any long-running AAA video game franchise.
Oh, sure.
Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. See, but you can still have a long-running franchise and still pull good things out of it. Like Zelda, I think, has been strong with almost every entry.
That's true. Well, I mean, okay, maybe...
And that one
Maybe
doesn't...
Assassin's Creed isn't even the best example. I don't really know much about the newer games, but they do try to have a specific theme for each game. That's at least different.
So Sal Mesa says that Naruto is an example of that. I've unfortunately never watched Naruto. I watched the first episode of it with my wife, and then I don't know why we didn't continue it. I think we were watching something else at the time. Probably Toriko, which is the dumbest anime. It's like if you combine Dragon Ball Z and the Food Network. That's basically what Toriko is.
So do you think that stories do they inherently exist within their plots, or can a good story be applied to any plot, if that makes any sense?
My answer is yes. If you're asking the question, I think you're asking. I think that any setup could be a good story. They just really need to think about what they want the story to be within that setup. For instance, we've done the collect 6 orbs story hundreds of times in video games, but there are some that do it better than others.
That's basically the storyline for Zelda.
Yeah, it is basically. And like sometimes you have ones that actually get potentially deep if you want to go deep with it, like Majora's Mask. I think that you should be able to ascend with this form, because having to switch back and forth to ascend, like I think if it's required to have the flying form to get this form, you should be able to ascend with this form.
Well, it gives you a little variety in the play-styles. Like, makes so there's some decisions you make.
Yeah.
After you beat this, like, after you beat it at 100%, you get a final form that, like, is all the forms combined.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Must admit, watching you play this has made me much less interested in playing it.
I mean, you're seeing the entire game, so there's not that much point anymore.
I'm kind of impressed with the amount of repetition there is in which bosses you have to repeat fighting. I also think that like the final form of this boss, where it's playing like the dire music right now, the big shtick is that he now summons water.
Yeah, final forms are interesting, especially when you have a final form, then it just goes into a third phase.
Yep.
Like, I guess Dracula is the obvious example.
Multiforms can be kind of amazing sometimes, but also it's one of those tropes that could be done not very well.
I don't think the trope has any inherent. Like, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having multiple forms. Like, with other tropes, I might say that there's something inherently wrong with just having the trope at all, but
Right.
I think it's entirely execution with the forms.
Salmes just says that having to pause the game to switch forms all the time makes it a little bad to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool that your final form that you get combines all the forms, though. I think that they should have done that a little earlier in the game. I don't know. One of these days I'll play this again myself and actually review it. But a lot of things to think about.
Have either of you played ActRaiser?
Yes. I even played ActRaiser 2, which is not worth it.
Okay. Maybe you'll play that instead of this game.
What do you think started the whole collecting rocks trope?
That's an excellent question.
I mean,
We
if you
should
count,
actually research this and figure out the answer before next stream.
it might have been the original Legend of Zelda.
Maybe in the video game universe. I actually think it probably started with stories.
Ooh, what? How? Okay, maybe.
Dragon Ball.
Actually, so, like the Labors of Hercules, you could make the argument that that's just a bunch of different things you're checking off the list that you have to do, and that's basically what collecting orbs is. Each dungeon's a different labor.
It's a physical manifestation of the trial, yeah. Salmes asked what the next review is going to be, and it's going to be Vatbarian. Vatbarian will be Monday's review, if I make it. I have no plans on not making it at this point. But yeah, I think 12 Labors of Hercules might be good. I mean, it seems like the idea of collecting a thing has been around for a very long time. Like that's the hero's journey trope, right? The magic helmet that they always get as part of their quest. The object that enables them to complete their quest.
Yeah, I think, a lot of fantasy stuff probably just comes straight from like old mythological tropes.
Right.
It's interesting exploring like what all those different tropes actually do, and why they exist in stories.
Yeah, the history of tropes.
Yeah.
Salome says that he liked ActRaiser's 1's overworld more, but ActRaiser 2 had the better side-scrolling parts. What do you think, Caldrath, since you're the one who's played both?
I felt like ActRaiser 2 was really clunky. Like, maybe it was better, but like the whole flying thing was probably like, I guess the flying thing was more disappointing. Like, if you just didn't use it, it was probably just as good. But then when you're actually flying, which was like the big selling point, it was like super slow and clunky.
Now, I was watching you play this, but that boss looked a lot easier than I remember it when I played this game.
You have to remember that I probably spent like 10 hours fighting this boss.
Oh gosh.
Like, just repeatedly.
Well, I was watching this pattern, I'm like, this isn't that tough. But then again, I don't remember how Firebrand controls, so that may make a huge difference.
Like, I feel like that boss is actually one of the best uses of the hover mechanic, because you have to like regulate your height, and like whenever you have to dodge something, you have to fall, and then the only way you can get height back is using the moving platforms. So it's kind of a showcase for like using elevation as a resource. Like, whenever you need to dodge, you have to consume that resource, and then refilling it isn't necessarily a simple thing.
That is a good way to put it. Like, he would just descend into the cloud.
Yeah, I like how he could fly in Firebrand form in this scene, but not normally.
He can when you're on the overworld, just not when you're side-scrolling.
Phalanx almost summoned the power of infinity. I like how it's called. This is the Infinity Stones. This is the Avengers right here. There's colored stones. You have to collect them.
What a world that we live in. That like
Disney stole it from Demon's Crest. So Salome says the thing with ActRaiser 2 is that on its original hardware, the game barely works, but on an emulator, it's so much better. I need to play these games. I've been wanting to play the Quintet games, but I want them to be like re-released so I can purchase them. But
like Illusion of Gaia, Soul Blazer, and Terranigma.
So I played Illusion of Gaia. I played Terranigma, but I have not played the ActRaiser games, and I'd like to.
So, did you play Soul Blazer?
No, I haven't played Soul Blazer either.
Yeah, that was a pretty good game.
Yeah, it was similar to Illusion of Gaia, right?
Yeah.
So
the interesting thing about Soul Blazer is like while you're playing it, you're like restoring the town for the area that you're in. So it kind of is a little bit like ActRaiser, where everything builds up as you go.
Dark Cloud is the one game that I played that had that mechanic, and when I played it, which was the PlayStation 2 era, it was completely novel to me, and I really liked the idea. I think a Metroidvania should take that idea and have a town that you rebuild from exploring inside the Metroidvania world. I think that would be really cool if a game did that.
Shoot, I'm trying to remember if there are any like that.
It seems like an idea that should have been done by now, but I don't remember if one exists.
You could argue that collecting more NPCs to move into, say, Hollow Nest counts.
Maybe. Dark Cloud is more like Diablo. Somebody says he's never played Dark Cloud. It's more like Diablo in the sense that you just do kind of like randomized roguelike type dungeons that has a similar to Ocarina of Time fighting system.
Oh, no.
It was one of my first PlayStation 2 games, so I also have a lot of nostalgia with like the graphical upgrade in that game as well. So what happened with Dark Cloud is I rented it right after I got my PS2 and was so enamored by its mechanic that I returned it and then went and bought it immediately after the first night of playing it. But I don't know if I would put it like on like a top list anywhere. I think it's a pretty good game, but it's a little bit repetitive. Yeah, it has a similar lock-on system to Ocarina of Time. What were you gonna say, Calderoth?
Yeah, sometimes your favorite games aren't necessarily good games.
Right.
Like Demon's Crest is one of my favorite games. It's probably like a 7 out or 8 out of 10.
So I'd like to point out that boss's name was Flyer. What?
That knocks the whole point off of it.
Yeah, I grew up in the era of Blockbuster Video, so we rented a lot of games.
Yeah, one of my other games that I really like is Mega Man X5, which, if you just play through it, it's not very good. But like I feel like it has a really high skill cap, especially once you get the Speedster and Hyperdash, and then you just start going nuts on bosses. But it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah. Mega Man, I actually like X5. I actually like X6 to a degree. There's some aspects of it that I don't like.
X6 is like one of the buggiest games, and it's either amazingly good because of the bugginess or terrible because of the bugginess, depending on how you're playing it. Like when you're trying to speed run it, it's like crazy because you can like almost instantly kill the bosses when you use the like Saber Dash cancel with the guard shell. Like if you put the guard shell on top of the boss and then you like attack them, then it hits them like a ton of times, and the Saber Dash cancel means you can slash and then immediately cancel it and then slash again. So you just like instantly obliterate them. And there was this.
That makes me want to play it more again.
There's this move called the Ensuizen that Zero can do, that if you start it on a platform and end it not on a platform, you're just completely invincible until you go through a door.
So Salme says that X6 is super bizarre, it's cheap and random. I think it's incomplete. Something was going on with Capcom in that area, and I don't know what it was.
And also it had the Reploids that you had to rescue, and if you failed to rescue them, you could never try again. They were just dead.
Right. That was the thing that drove me crazy. At the time, I think I still had the completionist mindset, so it really bothered me when that happened. I don't think I had been broken of my completionist mindset at that time.
Well, and then like you get parts from a lot of them, so some of the best upgrades you can just never get.
Right. Yeah, it was all missable. Didn't X5 have that same thing going on though?
So X5, you got parts from the bosses only if
that's
they
what
were
it was.
high enough level. So basically, you had to like go suicide like 3 times before you go to the first boss.
That's what it was. You don't even really need those parts, to be honest, though. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, you can only equip 4 at a time, I believe it was. So you just pick the 4 best ones, which is obviously Speedster, Hyper Dash, Saber Plus, and there was another one that like extended your range or something like that.
Salme says, "Check it out." We'll see you later, Salme. Thanks for the questions and thanks for joining in.
He was just here to see all of Demon's Crest, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't beat the secret boss. You're going to do that, right?
I guess I could. It's an hour and 44 minutes. Yeah, it gives you a password after this, and then you punch it in. Or I think it might just automatically show up on the next thing.
Good night, Salmes. Well,
Good night.
Good night.
I'm going to be right back. Give me just a moment.
Alright, Alright, so is there anything that we've ever wanted to say on stream about Professor when he's not around?
Well, he is probably going to go through the video at this point since we're near the end.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
we can leave a message for later.
it'll be on stream.
QFF KNRR.
I think that if you just go directly to the password screen, it puts it in.
That's nice.
Take a screenshot, Master, just in case.
Okay.
I do it, except that I'm recording the stream, so I can't really do anything on my computer.
I just hit print screen.
That works.
I'm sure you'll remember it though.
Yeah. It looks familiar. Actually, I might have to reset the game.
So then the latest subreddit post was that Zangetsu mode seems or feels soulless in Bloodstained, which I think is an interesting thing for them to say.
So I don't really like these bonus modes that make Metroidvanias into not Metroidvanias.
And I agree with that. I felt the same way about Richter mode. I never really finished Richter mode. It's boring to me.
It seems worse than just replaying the game.
Right.
For most of them. I mean, unless it's like a cool boss or something that has very specific, cool abilities that you've always wanted to use.
Yeah, like I think that the only one that was really done well was Julius mode and Dawn of Sorrow. Probably because it wasn't that. What's that?
I don't have any money. I need to buy potions.
Is this the ultimate form right here?
Yeah, so I can like use the thing and I can fly.
That's cool.
Use the dash.
So, do you get the charge attack with this one too? Like if you hold down the button?
I don't think anything has a charge attack.
I could have swore that one of these forms had a charge attack. Maybe I'm thinking, no, I could have swore I had a charge attack. Huh.
So I have a pet peeve. Is with things. When people name things, but they're just really uncreative with how they name them, and it's really obvious that they just took some other word and changed it slightly. You know, like with basically every other Pokemon, for example.
like Caldrath. Spells. So yeah, there's all these spells.
Are these any useful in the final boss?
Not really. Like some of them are. I think these two are like AoE damage, but it's not enough to matter.
Nintendo does it a lot, I think.
do you
Even
think?
with otherwise good games like Magmore Caverns. Like, come on.
What do you think of when they go with naming themes, like how in Dragon Ball Z everybody's named after vegetables?
I actually like naming things. I think they're cute.
I like how ginseng is the best potion.
I don't remember what all of these do.
It seems like you need a manual for this.
Sure. Yeah. I think I remember the red one being the full life refill, and then like one of the other ones being like automatic refills.
Oh, they tell you what to do if you click on it.
Yeah, so that's the one I want, so I need a ton of money.
I think you should just go explore levels instead of trying to doing the...
Oh my god, where'd your money go?
It disappeared when I loaded the game. Because it doesn't store your money in the password.
Oh my god.
That's kind of annoying.
Like,
Also-
there aren't that many letters.
What was with Capcom not using battery backup for so long? It's like Capcom just got better when memory cards became a thing.
Wait, didn't Gargoyle's Quest use saves?
I think it might have actually. Maybe? I vaguely remember passwords actually. Does that guy just automatically talk to you when you go in front of him, or are you just accidentally pushing the button?
He says something different based on what form you're in.
Oh.
So, like, if you don't know what a form does, then you can talk to him and he'll tell you.
That's an interesting way of doing it. I like how he knows more about it than you do.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what I am! Tell me, drunkard in town, what am I?
Does this game have anything to do with the animated television series Gargoyle?
No.
I don't think so.
No, Firebrand is a enemy in Ghosts and Goblins, just like a regular enemy, and they just decided to make a game based off of it. I don't know if they just like had the sprite lying around and one of the developers was just like, hey, what if we did an entire game off of this sprite? Or what the story was with that. I could swear there's another form besides this. I'm looking this up.
Okay, I just looked this up and I discovered
Oh, wait.
that.
Oh, this has a charge shot. I forgot about that.
Okay, there you go.
Just this form.
That's what it was.
So, Ghosts and Goblins is described as a run and gun. Is this accurate?
Who says this? Oh no.
It uses projectiles, but
Sorry.
some are guns.
What genre would you put it in? Like, this is like trying to describe some game as a Metroidvania that just barely fits. I would not count it as a running gun on the basis that most running guns are cathartic power trip experiences. I say that, but then there's like Contra, which is definitely not a power trip because one hit kills you, and that actually describes Ghosts and Goblins pretty well. So, I mean, I guess that might be an okay genre to put it in.
Oh my god. I just got a double-decker peanut butter cracker. It's like, you know how peanut butter crackers, it's like 2 crackers and peanut butter. This, 2 layers of peanut butter with 3 crackers. Just on a tray.
I like how you still have to switch back to water form when you're underwater. It's not the perfect form anymore.
No, I didn't have to. It's just the projectile's wider in the water form, so it
Sure.
breaks blocks better.
Maybe if you charge your attack. Yeah, the thing I remember most about this form is the fact that you could charge your attacks. So that was the situation you were talking about where it's really hard to dodge.
Yeah.
Is this the final boss? I remember there being more fire.
I mean, there's different forms of it. The problem with the charge attack is that you have to use the A button, and so it's really hard to hold.
Oh, that's annoying. I mean, you can always switch that in the emulator, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, this boss looks kind of bullcrap. That sounded like a Final Fantasy VI sound effect just there.
They decided to make the healing thing extremely slow.
Let's say this does not look fun.
I think this game is very interesting. Can you kill that spark?
Nope.
That's kind of dumb.
Wait, I'm still using the crown.
Did you want that one or did you want the armor?
I think this one does more damage, so...
Okay, well damage
Either-
is usually better.
Yeah. Maybe the armor would be better because I'm getting hit a lot.
How are you supposed to dodge all this? I think they literally made this with the idea of just stacking potions.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching this, I'm like, I don't see any openings.
Oh.
Whoops.
Alright, maybe I should just use the armor.
Oh man,
Potion, no.
he had the consumable problem. That's another subject. The idea of consumables and what makes them good, when are they bad. I kind of look at them as cheats. I think if you look at them as being necessary, that makes them a lot worse than they actually are, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm watching this guy's pattern, and it looks like he rotates in a clockwise fashion. So if you circle him, you might be able to dodge his attacks. Although it seems like...
Yeah, some of them are clockwise, some of them aren't. But they fly in from the side of the screen really fast. So.
Like I'm sort of seeing a pattern. It seems like you're much better off being in front of him than you were behind him.
Because the projectiles come out of his back.
Yeah. So you definitely want to reposition yourself to his face.
Yeah, so let's instruct this person who's played this game 6 times on what to do.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't know how many times he's fought this
I
boss.
have not solved this boss. It's pretty much just like face tank it and hope you have enough health.
Sometimes it's easier to like look at the footage afterwards too and kind of watch the boss pattern without being in the midst of the battle. I've actually had to do that a couple of times. Now that I've started recording everything I do, it's actually kind of useful.
So what is the best kind of post-game challenge?
Oh man, ESA. I'm trying to think of what games have post games.
Post games I'm not a big fan of.
Like, do you count the Upside Down Castle as post game? Because if that's post game, that's not a good example.
I guess I would. ESA's post-game is like a different game, so I don't even think I'd just call it a post-game challenge.
That's true. It's kind of like you unlocked ESA 2. Or you unlocked La Mulana ESA version.
Yeah.
How did I describe it in my original review? The post game of ESA is like if La Mulana and Cave Story had a big crying baby. I don't remember how I put that. I don't even know if it's accurate anymore. It's one of my old reviews. And you went this whole fight without him doing that. I wonder if there's a way to trick his AI into skipping that pattern.
His back is gonna hurt. You should not be in his back.
Yeah. It seems like he doesn't shoot from his back, but it also doesn't seem like he'd do much damage from the front, so I don't know.
I'm an expert at this game now.
The charge attack seems to pierce through him, so if his back is weak, that might actually hit it.
Like, how can you tell how much damage each attack is doing, though?
I'm going based off his screen shakes. Well, this is not a good situation. Well, the armor seems to be helping a lot.
I mean, it's making it so I survive the hits, but I'm doing less damage.
Anyway, as I'm playing Batbarian, I keep thinking about whether or not Master would like it, and I don't know if it's your brand of puzzles. Like, the game overall kind of reminds me of Cathedral, like, in the sense that it's also a spatial reasoning based action platformer. But it's also probably closer to a true Metroidvania in the sense that everything's contiguous rather than Zelda dungeon based.
Are there video games actually like made for smart people?
It depends on how you define smart people. Like, what do you mean by made for smart people? You mean like you have to have an education to do it, or what do you mean?
I mean, like puzzles in video games tend to be, you know, basic spatial reasoning puzzles. Like, are there any games that make you do calculus or something?
So you're asking if you actually need an education to do it, the puzzle. I don't think there would be any profit in that. Like, only CPAs could handle this game. I think most CPAs would not want to play that game because that's what they do for their job. Although I say that there was a financial advisor who really liked EVE Online because of the economy in that game. That was like a game they got completely addicted to because that was their main focus.
EVE's one of those games I want to try, but have never had the willpower to.
I probably just made it sound way better than it may actually be. I've never played it, but apparently a financial analyst thought it was great because you can manipulate the economy. However, the economy is also really based on the multiplayer aspect of it.
I don't talk much about the multiplayer aspects of games that I like because, you know, most of the talk of Metroidvanias. But I like when there's that kind of player agency. And I really respect that EVE Online just has an economy, like a real functioning economy.
Yeah.
There's very few games even try to actually have player agency involved.
Well, I knew people who played World of Warcraft just to play the auction house, which is weird to me, but you know, that's what they like, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bit different, but I do enjoy. Well, one of the reasons I enjoy Path of Exile is because it has this whole bartering economy, and trading is actually horrible, just because you have to like go to a website and message people in game.
Oh.
And you have to like join their hideout, and it's not a good time.
They don't have good infrastructure for it.
Yeah, there's not like a gold standard. I mean, there's
wow. I was gonna say, I'm not sure. Color's gonna have to grind for gold again here.
What does beating him actually do? Let's find out.
It just gives you another ending.
He slayed the Dark Demon. I'm like, they're the greatest names for these enemies.
Yeah.
Wait, we haven't seen a single human. How can you know that's the human world? Were we in the human world this whole time?
I don't think so.
I'm so confused. Of course, we haven't paid attention to any dialogue, and we're trying to make sense of the ending. Oh no, he's making rocks fly off the ground. He's true Super Saiyan demon now.
Hope to find a true warrior who's Arthur, who will die in 2 hits. Yeah, like if you took this firebrand and put him against Arthur, no chance.
I like how suddenly he's like bloodlusting. He's like, I have to have glorious battle.
Like every character in this game is Vegeta.
Pretty much.
Wait, what was I saying?
Oh man, we were talking about EVE Online, Path of Exile.
Right. So it has, like, there's not like, it's not like World of Warcraft where you have gold or something. You have to trade things for other things. And you have these various orbs that people just kind of use as de facto currency, even though they like the intrinsic value that they have is that you can actually apply them to items because they're crafting materials, basically. I just think that's more interesting than what some other games do.
Kind of like Stone of Jordan and Diablo 2.
Yes.
So how did everybody feel about the idea of the auction house that Diablo 3 originally launched with?
I mean, if I could make some money by selling the things that I grind for online, if I could make like $50 a day, I'd do it.
That sounds like a terrible rate.
Yeah. Like if I'm having fun playing a video game, I'd do it.
I find it interesting that they ultimately dumped the idea.
It's
Like,
just, it
a lot of
made it
people
pay
hate
to
it.
win, and people really, really hate that.
yeah.
Even though it doesn't really matter because it's not, like, competitive.
There's nothing to win.
Yeah.
Sure, but people still like play gacha games, which is a similar idea but more random.
I
Like-
think the point in gacha games is to be able to flex on people. Be like, look what I got this 5-star character, and you don't. And you can't get it.
I've never really understood the appeal of that. I know that it's like a normal thing for like regular life, like check out this car I got, or you should be so jealous of my new TV or whatever. I've never understood that. Like, it's never been a thing that's been appealing to me personally. But it's also extremely common for people to do.
Yeah, it's different people are motivated by different things.
Yeah.
Some people are motivated by being a dick.
Well, I watch my 3-year-old kids occasionally, and like every once in a while they'll like get something and then they want to immediately show their brother. Like, look what I got! Look what I got! Apparently,
But do
there's
they-
pleasure in
do they
making people
say
jealous.
they can't- Oh, okay, do they say that they can't have it though? Like, I have this and you don't.
Well,
You can't touch it.
the thing I find like really funny about them at the age that they're at is that they usually congratulate the other person. Like, they root for each other, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when people are doing the flexing thing that you mentioned, they're not rooting for anybody. They're trying to show that they are in a better position. I don't like.
Yeah, they're not. That isn't even like I'm better than you. It's just like I have this thing that you don't.
I have this thing that you don't.
Because of
Right?
reasons.
Because I was willing to spend $5,000 on a gotcha. Like,
Or they just happen to roll it.
sure, or got it accidentally. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think I would be like showing it off if I got it accidentally, but.
Yeah, actually, I was playing Genshin Impact earlier today, and I rolled, and I happened to roll the like 5-star that's currently on the thing.
Oh,
And
great.
I'm like, I don't even want this character. It's just gonna like sit in my inventory.
So the last time I played Symphony of the Night, I told myself I was explicitly not going to use the. Why can't I think of the name of the sword now? The big samurai, the chrysogram. Yeah. And I got 2 of them. Like I wasn't even going to try and do it, but I just happened to run into 2 of them. I didn't even have luck gear on at the time.
Did you end up using it?
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I use it at that point? I'm like, I can equip 2 chrysograms at once.
It's your whole goal to not use the chrysogram.
Well, I wasn't going to like explicitly go for it. The funny thing is I didn't even know about the chrysogram until like after I had beaten the game like twice. And I was like, okay, let's try a new weapon this time. So I Googled best weapon, and of course it was the thing that came up.
Yeah, I actually never got it either.
People love optimizing the fun out of their game.
I have a nasty habit of doing that.
That's something you have to remember whenever you play something that's like an RPG with stats. You're not necessarily meant to just have the optimal character. You're supposed to have an average character. And then you have people who will just look up a guide for what the optimal thing to do is the entire game.
Unfortunately, that's sort of how my brain works. Is that I sit down and try and figure out. Like I told you guys last week that I sat down and figured out dice odds while I was bored at work. That's just what I do.
Like, some of the enjoyment I get out of game is just optimizing things and
Sure.
Optimizing things and finding optimal things to do is fun, but that's different from like knowing that this enemy drops this sword and that these enemies aren't worth killing. Or whatever.
if you look up like the optimal thing, then you're not getting that enjoyment out of the game. You're just getting the optimal thing, which can be fine if that's what you want out of it, but
well, I hadn't done it until after I'd beaten Symphony of the Night twice before I decided that was something I was going to try.
Yeah, I'm not calling you out or anything. I'm just
sure. But I've ruined some games for myself.
Decade scrub, jeez.
I've ruined some games for myself by optimizing them too much. Like I had some Pathfinder board game thing, and I was like, all right, get my best party, and it was just like, well, now I'm just rolling the dice to see. Like now I'm just going through the motions of winning at this point. Like,
so what I started doing in D&D is I start optimizing for stupid things, like I'm gonna make the best jumper, or like I had a character who was like insanely good at disarming opponents, and that was it. So there was actually this game where I had this character that's just stupid good at disarming and tripping, and there was this like level 13 wizard or something like that, and we were like level 2, and I went up and I tripped him.
The poor wizard probably didn't have any strength to resist that.
And he's just like, what is happening? And then like power word blind came out, and I'm like, oh well, I guess I'll just be blind over here for a bit.
Isn't it permanent with power word?
It's supposed to be permanent when it's that big of a level difference, but the DM's like, you're level 2, we don't need to make you permanently blind at this point. So yeah, this is the end of Demon's Crest, so I guess it's time to switch over.
You get this nice graphic that goes along with that. That's neat.
Dude has some muscular legs.
Well, we only have about 20 minutes left. Do we want to switch over to the other option?
We
can watch the intro again.
We could. I don't think we'd have enough time to really get anywhere if we switched over.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was thinking. So we could let the intro play for a little bit and just talk for like 8 more minutes and then just call it at that point.
All right.
Yeah. My laptop, I got the warning for critically low battery anyway now, so if you want to make any bets on how long I'll be in the call.
Well, maybe now is a good time to. Oh, you're just rebooting. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know. I was just gonna say that when I play D&D now, I almost strictly use or do support classes. Is what I enjoy the most. Where I buff the other players or I control the enemies somehow. I personally hate optimizing for damage. I think it's the most uninteresting thing ever. But that's.
It's one of the things that you can get like immediate feedback from, and like know when you're making progress.
Oh, sure.
So it's the easiest one to do.
The higher number. The irony behind optimizing for damage is that the best thing that the DM can do to counter that is just increase the HP of your monsters, and then it's like you did nothing. Yeah.
But then it makes it so that no one else in your group effectively does any damage.
Right. It kind of ruins the party. So, like I said, when I optimize, I usually play a wizard or a bard or something and optimize for things like controlling the battlefield or buffing the party. Buffing's usually less interesting than controlling. I generally go with the controlling aspect.
That can also like completely neuter a fight.
Yeah, it can. With the right spell. Sometimes that's fun too, though.
That was actually the problem with my disarm guy, is like, if we went up against any humans, I just like, oh, none of you have weapons now. And then we just like immediately win the fight. So we wound up just like fighting a bunch of monsters constantly.
So they didn't have any weapons. That's funny. Yeah. That's the drawback of min-maxing, is that the DM, when they counter it, ends up being a worse game overall. So it's not usually a good idea to go too overboard with that.
Yeah, even if it's something stupid like tripping and disarming.
Like when I build a wizard, I usually pick a variety of spells so that I have one for every occasion. Like, I don't pick spells based on their effects. I pick spells based on the fact, okay, this one targets dexterity, this one targets wisdom, this one targets constitution. So, when one doesn't work, or when a situation comes up where I don't have a dominant strategy that I have to rely on, and that generally works a lot better.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's been describing their D&D playthrough to me. Apparently they're a bard who damages people emotionally by just insulting them. Is this a thing?
That's one of the bard's base spells, yeah.
Okay.
It's Vicious Mockery is their cantrip.
Yeah.
Isn't
He'll
it
just
also,
message me the insults he comes up with.
Isn't it also like one of their best damage dealing spells?
Oh,
if
that's
you want
great.
to be a DPS bard, you actually have to use that.
I think it gives them disadvantage on certain things too, or something. It's really good. It's a great thing to spam every turn. One of the things they did in 5th Ed is they really dropped the number of spells per day that any casting class has, so they kind of have to rely on cantrips a little bit more.
Well, there wasn't even cantrips in 3rd, was there?
Yeah, they did, but they weren't like damage in that game.
Oh, okay.
Like, cantrips are basically damage spells now. I mean, they still have things like prestidigitation and stuff like that for like the fun stuff, but
Good lord, this is a long intro.
I have never watched this intro before until we were like waiting for this stream, and I was testing the recording. So this is the first time I had seen this. Basically, Jerk Demon knocks him out of the sky, and he has to fight a zombie dragon.
Yeah, apparently the crest fell all over the planet, and then Firebrand went and they got picked up by different demons, and Firebrand went and fought everyone, collected all the crests, and then right after he fought the last one, he was weak from the fight, and then Phalanx comes in here and is just like, "Brah! Take all your stuff."
Although apparently the crests get scattered again.
I don't know why he hands them out. He gives 3 of them to Arma, that other gargoyle I fought.
It seems like he should just put them all in a glove and then snap his fingers.
I think there's something with all the crests have to be gathered together by somebody else, except for the one of the crests, the one that you don't have when you beat the game 100%.
This game doesn't have logic. It's Demon's Crest.
Oh, sometimes I see a plot though, and I'm like, there could have been a great story here. It could have been good. They just needed to do it better.
Yeah.
It's basically just this guy's took my stuff. I'm gonna get it back.
This game is not one of those games. I look at this and I'm like, yeah, this is just a throwaway.
It's weird that you have that feeling where something's bad and you just think, wow, this could be good if only it was good.
Right.
How many plots in Mega Man were, oh, it's not Wily. Oh, wait, it actually is Wily.
It actually is Wily.
Spoilers.
Surprisingly, Mega Man X8, I don't think it was Sigma in that, and I don't think you actually fight him at all.
No, there was a huge time, there's a time skip, and then completely different enemy, and then they didn't pursue it at all after that.
Yeah. Well, it's because Capcom, I don't know what was going on with Capcom in that era, but everything was falling apart at the end of the PS2 era. And then they came out with Resident Evil 4, and then that made history and kind of changed the gaming industry. And there's the no music demo.
Yeah. See him poorly fight a dragon.
So, Master, have you decided what game you're going to pick for next week?
Probably Rain World.
Oh, okay.
Just because it actually runs on my laptop.
So,
And it seems relevant enough.
how experienced are you with that game, just out of curiosity?
I've played 2 hours over the course of like two. I started an hour on 2 different occasions, and I never actually got into it or learned anything. So
Salmes played it for the first time blind yesterday, I think, on stream. That was on Monday on stream. And he got off the stream and was like, "This game is bullcrap. I didn't get anywhere." I'm like, well, I think I have left many, many warnings about that, and anytime I've talked about the game. That is a game that if you're not getting hints from anywhere, you're probably going to be spending 3 to 4 hours just figuring out how the heck things work. So it'll be interesting to see how far you get next week.
I mean, probably not past the first tutorial bit. I mean,
You think?
playing for like an hour and a half, maybe. You know, I want to have time for the randomizer. Yeah.
You want to give time to the randomizer. I think it was good that we got pretty much 100% Demon's Crest this week. So
It is 100%.
yeah,
Not pretty much.
it is 100%. Right.
Yeah. So, if this was a Metroidvania, would it be a Microvania?
Yes.
How long do you think it would take if you didn't know what you're doing?
I think I looked it up, and like how to beat had it at like 3.5 hours,
Interesting.
or how long to beat. But that's also how long to beat, like, not completionist. So
Oh, okay. But the completionist rate was probably much longer than that.
yeah, I think it had like 5 hours for completionist.
I don't know. It doesn't strike me as a mini. I don't know what it is about it that makes me think otherwise, but it has kind of an epic feel to it. I don't know if that makes a difference, but
So if a game was epic enough for like half an hour, then it wouldn't be a Microvania anymore.
yeah, I don't know. Some things you just kind of, you go with your gut on it, and I don't know. I mean, if you did a survey, I highly doubt that most people would say this is a micro or a mini. It was certainly sold as a full-fledged game. I think it was $50 back in the day.
Yeah. It would actually had negative sales at one point though, because so more people were returning it than buying it.
Because they were finishing it so quickly.
Yeah, because you can literally just like go beat 3 levels and then go to the ending.
Well,
it's like, oh, I beat the game. I guess I'm done with it.
If you wonder why they never did anything with the series past this point.
Yeah.
I don't know, in my mind, this game feels a little incomplete to me as well. Like, I get the sense there's a little bit of a troubled development because of how often they repeated bosses. But maybe I'm wrong on that.
I'm glad I watched you play it instead of committing to playing it.
It's a good game, I swear.
I'll be playing it myself in a few months, hopefully. We'll see. Every week there's something new that comes up that's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm pushing that one back out again. So
something interesting for a premise for when I play Rain World, we could say that I go until I die. But also, if I die before, like...
Oh, you're going to die, like, in the first 5 minutes. Come on.
Yeah.
It is so easy to die in that game. It's like, all right, well, this week I guess we're doing the randomizer. Well, anyway, I think this is a good place to wrap up with the final crest. The image of Firebrand kneeling over with all those scratches on him.
Hello.
So, well, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.